So, good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Kaltenbach from the Tennessee Native Plant Society, and tonight is our March seminar presentation, and the date is March 17th, 2026. And we have our presenters tonight, two very special people who are deeply entwined with and committed to the Cedar Glades in Tennessee. And I know that's a favorite subject of everybody. And our guests tonight are Leslie Ann and Jason Allen, and they have amazing um, resumes relating to uh, native plants, conservation, nature. Leslie Ann actually has a degree from the Ohio State University in environmental interpretation, and she is a naturalist, a tour guide. She is an interpreter and a ranger. She's worked at many different heritage sites in Tennessee, and she worked for many years for the Tennessee State Parks as a ranger and interpreter. And then since 2018, Leslie Ann has been teaching a wildflower identification program through the Nature Education Society of Tennessee. And she literally, I think, if I've got this correct, you started loving plants and nature since childhood, and you've
Yes.
kept it up all these years.
Yeah.
And Jason Allen is a naturalist. He's a wilderness guide, an author, and a photographer. And he's led interpretive programs for numerous groups, including Tennessee Native Plant Society, um, uh, Tennessee Green or 10 Green Land Conservancy, the Sierra Club, and others. And so he worked also for the state parks in Tennessee and produced events, nature festivals, wrote brochures, newsletters, and he even was instrumental in establishing the first state certified arboretum in a state park at the Couchville Lake Arboretum. And his articles appear in lots of things that probably all of our group are reading, including the Tennessee Conservationist. So I want to welcome Leslie Ann and Jason tonight, and the subject is springtime in the Cedar Glades. So please take over.
Okay, we're
Thank
going to
you.
go ahead and share our screen here and get together. All righty, is that showing up good for everybody? Yes.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, good deal. Well, first of all, we kind of get the question like, what in the world is a cedar glade? And so the simplest answer to that is a glade is simply an opening in a forest. And in this case, where we're at, it's cedar forest over here. Um, the rock is kind of exposed to at the surface in a lot of the areas. It's just a treeless area, a lot of grass, and very rocky, thin soils. And so they're called Middle Tennessee limestone glades and barrens. They're located mostly in this yellow portion, which is the inner basin of the central basin, if you know your geology here in Tennessee. This central basin was formed about the same time that the mountains were being formed. There was a big dome that got pushed up underneath Nashville. Of course, rocks are kind of laid down in layers as it was a kind of open seas and whatnot, and layer after layer after layer got laid down. When the mountains are being formed, the rocks buckled under Middle Tennessee, and this dome popped up, and you can imagine that being stretched and lots of cracks and whatever. And eventually, through the years afterwards, it just eroded away all the way back down here in this center basin to some of the oldest rocks, some of the Ordovician rocks. And so the layers and the formations that we find around here are like the Lebanon Formation and the Ridley Formation. So here's how that inner basin overlies our Middle Tennessee counties. And you can see on this map, it's got a few of the cedar glades and things kind of marked on this one, but this one shows it a little bit better. So you can see all that concentration here in Middle Tennessee. And it's just not Middle Tennessee that we have these cedar glades. Um, there's other glades that are maybe the geology is just a little bit different, but you can kind of see them scattered. There's a few in northern Georgia and Alabama, and there's some in central Kentucky also. So they all kind of line up around in here, but ours are just really unique because of the limestone underneath, and that causes some really rare microhabitats and whatnot. There were several people that are kind of instrumental in kind of the early history of glades. This one is Augustin Gattinger, and you're going to hear his name more this evening as there are several plants that are named after him. He was in the Nashville area after the Civil War, so in the 1860s, and he wrote this Flora of Tennessee that you can see. This is the face of the book here, and so he likened the cedar glades here in Middle Tennessee as to anything. He said they were more beautiful than any English garden he had ever seen. I believe he's German descent. So that's a kind of a cool thing. But yeah, we'll talk more about him and see some of the flowers that are named after him a little bit later. So jump ahead 100 years, and in the 1960s, this is Elsie Quarterman. It's one of my favorite pictures of her because that just reminds me of me. I was just always getting going and loving to go through the woods and through the fields and go look at my flowers and everything. Elsie Quarterman was a biology professor at Vanderbilt University, and she had a lot of grad students come up with her, and Thomas Hemmerly, I know, was one, and the Baskins were some others, but they all kind of had this love for the cedar glades. She and some of her students actually in the 60s rediscovered the Tennessee coneflower that Augustine had found, and so that got listed on the endangered species list. And we'll show you that beautiful flower here in a little bit and talk a little bit more about that. But I was fortunate enough when I worked at Radnor Lake to be able to meet her. I believe it was her niece or a granddaughter that had brought her by. She was in a film strip that they had there in the visitor center that talked about the early days of Radnor Lake. So I really enjoyed talking with her, and I told her about some of the botany professors at Ohio State that I'd studied under, and she said, "Oh yes, they were nice fellas." So that made me feel really, really good that she liked the fellas that the professors that I'd studied under at Ohio State and everything. But she's known for kind of really getting in and learning a lot about these glades, and she even went and designated these different zones. And I'm going to let Jason tell you a little bit more about the zones here in the Cedar Glades.
Yeah, that's one of my, I think, most fascinating things about the Cedar Glades are the various zones and the various places that the plants decide to grow. I mean, it's very, it's like a Cedar Glade is pretty much its own little microclimate. I always sort of compare it to like the desert. In fact, I've even had on hikes told people like this is our Tennessee's version of a desert. You have these Cedar Glade plants which are subjected to like a wide variety of climatic conditions, and that will influence their particular position in the glades. And the factors usually you look at on this chart, you have the light intensity, the temperature, soil depth, and all those things that affects the available moisture as well. So as you can see in the glades,
nice Siamese cat I saw. Oh wow.
In the glades, you have the high light intensity and the temperature, but you have the shallow soil depth and not much moisture available. But then you look in the woods there, you have like lesser light intensity and temperature, but you have deep soil depth and more available moisture. So, yeah, I think it was Elsie Quarterman, as far as I can tell, who came up with the idea of these different zones of a cedar glade. And she came up with 6 zones of a cedar glade. This is a nice little graph here, but I'm going to show you actually a photo of a cedar glade. This is Couchville Cedar Glade. And this in this particular photo, you can see pretty much all 6 zones of a cedar glade. And I hope you can see my cursor here. I'm going to kind of point out that you got the bare limestone there. That's what she calls zone 1, just bare rock, nothing, of course, growing there. Then zone 2, if you look right beside there, she would call that the gravelly glades, the gravelly cedar glades, very rocky. Uh, and the zones are based on soil depth. So zone 2, the gravelly glades would be anywhere probably 2 inches or less of soil, not much at all. And that's where you'll find some plants like limestone faneflower. That's a sedum there, glade stonecrop. You would find maybe the glade cress there in zone 2. A lot of rare plants. Not many things can grow there in that zone 2 because, like I said, it's very rocky, very gravelly. It takes a really hardy plant to survive there. Then you go over a little further here, zone 3, she called the grassy glades. That could be anywhere soil depth from maybe 2 inches up to maybe about 8 inches. And that's where you'll find the majority of the plants in the glades and barrens. And these grassy glades here, you'd probably find species such as like rose verbena, uh, Gattinger's prairie clover would be there, maybe Nashville breadroot in those grassy glades. Then we move over here. Zone 4 is what she called the shrub zone, where you see the shrubs here, a little bit more soil, a little bit better soil depth, maybe 8 inches up to a foot of soil there. And species you might find here would include shrubby St. John's wort, coralberry, aromatic sumac, glade. That's a glade privet there, which is actually a native privet. That's not the Chinese invasive privet. We actually have a glade privet. So in that shrub zone is where you find most of those kind of plants growing. Then if you look right behind the shrub zone, that's where she would call zone 5 would be sort of, she would call it, I think, the cedar woods, where you find the cedar trees. You'd kind of get 12 inches more usually of soil there. You'd find a cedar tree. It's there. You'd find that's a blue ash. Blue ash is one you'd see on the edges of the glade a lot. And winged elm, maybe hackberry, trees that can survive kind of those rough conditions, the thin soil, and survive there. And then way back over there, if you look way back behind the cedar trees, the forest, that's the zone 6 would be actually the oak hickory forest, where you have much deeper, richer soil and a wide variety of and bigger trees growing there. So I've always been fascinated every time I go to a cedar glade just to look at the various zones, try to point them out and see what grows where. It always fascinates me. There are some that like multiple zones. I mean, like you may find natural breadroot in zone 2 or 3, and some will be in a couple of different zones or on the edges of some of those zones. So from here on out, I think we're going to take a look at some of the spring wildflowers you might find in the cedar glades. We tried our best to kind of put these in order of when they bloom. So the very first one we're going to show, this is long-styled glade cress, Leavenworthia stylosa. This is always the first wildflower we find in the cedar glades. This year I found my first bloom on January the 7th, believe it or not. They are hardy. They are tough. Usually they bloom. The more typical time you first see them blooming is February. They usually peak in March. But I have in many years, mild winters, found a few of these blooming in January. And they're very tough. I found snow on top of them, and a couple of days later, I go back and find them blooming again. So always people worry about some of these glade plants when it gets real cold and snow. They are tough. They're built to survive these conditions. This is a rare species. Pretty much you'll find it in the glades of Wilson, Rutherford, Davidson County. Has a really nice honey-like aroma. If you ever get close to them, really, really nice smell. And also the thing unique about them, they come in 3 different colors. So this is the same species here, 3 different colors. You see a violet there, colors. The white is the most probably prominent. You'll see the white glade cress, and back there's yellow glade cress. And that's all the same species. You'll find in some areas will have more of the yellow. Most areas seem to have more of the white. So, and the pollinators love these because early in January, February, when nothing else is blooming, when I see an early like bee out or fly, they go straight to these glade cress, which is in the mustard family. Recently, I've been seeing a lot of the falcate orange tip butterflies flocking to these. They love plants in the mustard family, and I'm seeing a lot of those on the glade cress recently. So yeah, when these early pollinators come out, this is one of the first plants they're going to find. So they love seeing the glade cress blooming. In the same family, on this, I wanted to add this photo too. That's I love this spot. This is you see the bare limestone, and that's all the lake crest right there. That's finding just a little bit of soil there, and you have like it looks like a wildflower garden. This is fantastic. I love scenes like this. So that's the long style lake crest again. The next photo is one that blooms near about the same time. Also, Leavenworthia. This is Leavenworthia uniflora. The common name is small glade cress. It is a little bit less showy, much smaller than the long style glade cress. It's not as colorful. It's the smallest of all the Leavenworthia species. And these typically occur in smaller populations, more scattered plants rather than the masses. You saw the other plant, the long stalk lake cress, it can be like almost like a ground cover at times when it gets really thick, even though it's a rare plant. But this was a little bit more sporadic, more random, but it's much smaller. And I have a photo here to show you how small it is compared to the long stalk lake cress. There's the small glade cress growing beside the long style glade cress. The long style, it's about the size maybe of a nickel. And then the small glade cress, maybe about the size of a pencil eraser. So when you hear the name small glade cress, you can see why they call it that, because it's much smaller than the more well-known, the long style glade cress.
Here's some more of the glade cress in the background, but this is Eggleston's violet, and AKA the glade violet, because it's pretty much the only one that grows in the glade. Now you'll find bird's foot violets, which will, I think, we have a picture of one of those a little bit later. They bloom a lot later. They're usually mid-April to late April, but these glade violets will be right behind the glade cress. We see a lot of this in like the Jones Mill parking lot, and again, just kind of the gravelly areas of the glade where it's getting heated up real good and getting a lot of sunshine. Pretty easy to identify as far as violets because of the habitat, but also because of the leaves. They have some that look like a regular violet, heart-shaped leaves, but then there's others that are kind of really deeply pinnately lobed and whatnot. So pretty little violet. And another one of my favorites, this is glade phlox. Now it looks like its cousin, the blue phlox, common blue phlox, that's very common in the woodlands and everything. But this one's a little bit not doesn't stand as erect. It's about the same size, maybe about 8 to 10 inches tall or so. But what they call a decumbent stem, they just are kind of lazy and lackadaisical, so they're kind of almost creeping phlox. But just a very pretty lilac color, very, very light and subtle. Sometimes they almost appear white. So it's hard to get a decent photograph of them and show their true color here. But Jason did a pretty good job with this photograph.
And those she's talking about now, the Eggleston's violet and glade phlox, those will be blooming right now. Those are like both like nearing their peak. So these are flowers we're showing that are blooming actually about right now.
Just starting to come out. There's a better picture of the phlox. Just a nice dainty little phlox, and it smells just like the common blue woodland phlox, which I love to sacrifice my flower allergies over and just get a big nose full.
They love really ditches good. Too.
Yeah,
they love ditches. If you find like a rocky area with ditches, that's a good place to find these. Yeah.
Oh, and these are actually in our backyard. Is that picture from our backyard?
It is.
Okay, yeah. So these are Carolina anemone. They're in the buttercup family. So it's one of those things. If you're one of my students, buttercups can have a lot of different petals. They usually have five, at least five. But I'm sure if we counted the petals and the sepals on these anemones, we'd get a whole lot of them there. But they started out growing just a couple of inches above barely above the grass that we have there in the backyard. As they get taller, they get just a little pair of leaves on their stem. But it's mostly those basal leaves that you can kind of see in this picture that are kind of right around in here. Just a typical kind of a buttercup leaf, nice palmate divided leaf on it.
And that's a pretty rare species. It's only
the back of it. Yeah.
Bedford, Davidson, Rutherford, Wilson County, I think are the only 4 counties where this was found. It's a state listed species.
Yeah, state listed. Very, very neat. So glad to have those. Oh, and here's one that's not actually a glade species to say. It's more found in those hickory woods and the cedar forest, kind of maybe on the outskirts of the glades. But this is early saxifrage. And so I remember when I worked at Radnor Lake, that was always one of the first ones I'd see over there. Really nice little flower too. It tends to like to be around in the ferns and the moss. kind of drier areas. We usually find them, well, when I worked at Long Hunter, we used to find them kind of right at the edge of the sinkholes too.
Okay, hoary cocoon.
What did you just say?
No, that's the name of the flower, hoary cocoon.
That sounds like an insult.
It does.
I
I've
swear
learned. I've
he just
learned over the
insulted
years.
me.
I've learned over the years that heights. You got to be careful saying that out loud because. But it's hoary cocoon. It's a fun. It's a fun thing to say. Fun word to say. The hoary refers actually to the fine, soft hair of the plant's leaves, and the cocoon. That was a Native American term for dye plant. They use this for a yellow or red dye. They used it in like to make body paint, to dye garments, that kind of thing. I know it was a lot had a lot of medicinal purposes too. The root of the plant was used for swellings and aches and various other ailments. I just love the color of this one. It's a really unique color. It's not really yellow. It's not really orange. It's somewhere in between. There's not many plants that I've seen, especially in the glades, that have that color. And that's one that'll be blooming soon. The hoary cocoon.
Yeah, it's kind of like that Tennessee orange. It's close to that Tennessee orange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this one surprises people sometimes. This is actually a fern, and this is in the glades. It's called adder's tongue fern. Um, this one, I actually saw my first one coming up the other day. It'll probably peak. It'll actually peak sometime in April, but they're starting to come out of the ground. Like the mosses, the ferns, they don't produce flowers. They reproduce by spores, and this one produces a single leaf-like frond and has that spore-bearing stalk there. And it gets its name from the spore-bearing stalk that resembles a snake's tongue. So they always tend to surprise people when they see these out in the glades because they wonder like what they are. And that's actually a fern, adder's tongue fern. So April's a good time to search for those. They're kind of usually near the gravelly glades, kind of on the edges.
Yeah. Did you say the leaf is about the size of your thumb?
Yeah, yeah. Glade Phacelia, another one that's somewhat rare. I think it's only found in the glades and barrens of just a few, I think just a handful of Middle Tennessee counties. Um, this one, I love the nickname. It's also called Glade Scorpion Weed. I think some of the old text also is that they call this one Glade Scorpion Weed, which I like some of these old common names. Most of the ones I find are kind of pale blue, but they also can be almost pure white. Um, they seem to like the outskirts of the glades, not maybe the gravelly glades, sort of the edges, kind of the grassy areas near the edge of the woods is where I find this one a lot. Um, I think I have a photo to show you how it can spread in the right conditions in a grassy area. This is actually beside my house. That is all glade Phacelia there in kind of a grassy area. Uh, it rarely looks that thick because out in the glades the soil is not quite as thick as this, but it's really spread there. Uh, I think I have one more of Glade Phacelia. I just like that particular scene there. That's just some big slab of bare limestone. You got a little bit of the glade moss, and there's like a Glade Phacelia right there in the middle of it. So a really unique species. That one will be coming along here soon. Let's see. That one looks like it's growing right out of the rock. I love that little photo there. That's actually glazed sandwort. It's in the pink family, the same family as like Deptford pink and like fire pink. Has the five petals, kind of deeply notched. It's definitely one of the smallest wildflowers you'll find in the cedar glades. Very thin stems and stems are almost like fishing line, very thin. You find it often like this, growing out of the cracks of the limestone and the rocks, at like kind of the gravelly glades. Um, it's also known as wild's baby breath because it's in the same family as the kind of the bouquet filler flowers that you've heard of called baby's breath. This one's though, unlike some of the others we've just shown that are very rare and glade endemic. This one's not necessarily it's not necessarily glade endemic or rare. I've seen these in a variety of habitats.
Yeah. Oh, now this is kind of up there in one of my favorites. I really like this. This is called yellow stargrass, and so it kind of reminds you of some of the blue-eyed grasses and whatnot, but not in the same family. These are easy to tell. Now they've got these kind of slender grass-like leaves to them, but they bloom down here in the leaves. The blue-eyed grasses are going to have a stalk that blooms way above the leaves. So that's the easiest way to tell them. But yeah, just they've got the six petals, so they look like a nice little yellow star. Here's the blue-eyed grasses. This one is actually called pale blue-eyed grass. So most of your blue-eyed grasses are blue, but there are some white ones. And so this is just a lighter shade of blue that tends to like these drier sites here in our cedar glades. This one is a hard one to get a photograph of because it's got this pale yellow flower, almost cream-like, I guess you could call it. I see some more adder's tongue fern in this picture, but this is called Tennessee milk vetch. It's an astragalus, and it's only known to occur in about 8 counties here, all in Middle Tennessee. Um, it's got like the seed pod is like a little hairy. All those flowers are kind of crammed up together in a head there, so they all kind of get then a little bean-shaped pod that will be fuzzy and whatnot. It's got a cousin, which I think I've got coming up a picture of it next, and so we go ahead and pull. Yeah, there's the Pines ground plum. So both of these are astragalus. Where you find this Tennessee milk vetch is a good place to find the ground plum too. Now this is Pine's ground plum, named after Milo Pine, who described it first in, I believe, it's 1987 or so. He discovered it. So both of these are in the pea family, and again have these nice kind of pea-shaped pods. But this ground plum has more of a smooth pea pod to it. So that's the ground plum. Did you have anything you want to say?
That's a very rare plant. In fact, it's only known in Rutherford County.
Yeah.
And they've been trying to get it to work on it, maybe plant it in some other places around Middle Tennessee, but that's super rare.
Yeah, you helped water some. Missouri, they meaning the Missouri Botanical Garden had raised some little plugs from some of the seeds that they had there in the seed bank that were from Middle Tennessee, and they planted some around Flat Rock and Stones River and Couchville. And that year, Jason has told me several times he had to carry buckets and buckets and buckets of water out to water these poor things. But his work paid off. We've got them established. They had cages around, little wire cages around them for a while. So, but they are all doing. The last time I checked, they were doing really good without the cages and without having to be watered. So, really, really good. Oh, here's another purple flower. This one's called violet wood sorrel. So it's one of the oxalises. Again, not really a glade plant, but more along the woods, drier woods kind of encircling the glades. Now, the one you'll find in the glade is this one. This is Miss Price's wood sorrel. Sadie Price was a lady botanist and an illustrator who was from Bowling Green, Kentucky. And she was there. She died about 1903, and her sister ended up giving a lot of her illustrations in her herbarium to the Missouri Botanical Garden. And so, but she illustrated other things besides flowers and things too. But she was really responsible for Kentucky's classifying a lot of Kentucky's plants and whatnot. So, but I love this wood sorrel. It is so pretty. It's got just enough red there in the center of it. And all these wood sorrels, of course, have the typical kind of clover-like leaf to them. But, oh, and then here's.
This is definitely one of my favorites. Definitely one of my favorites because purple is my favorite color. This is Nashville breadroot, and it's a somewhat rare species. It's found only in a few Tennessee counties. But mainly you'll find it kind of in the grassy and gravelly area. This is one you can find in zone 2 or zone 3. This is definitely zone 2, the gravel. I mean, it amazes me that something's growing right there and blooming. It's that beautiful and all that rock. But that's definitely the gravelly habitat there. It's named after the Nashville breadroot. Comes from the location of where it's found, which is around Nashville. And also its starchy root, because a lot of them closely related plants that have that starchy edible root. Bumblebees love this one. One of my favorite things about this plant, when they're in full bloom, I can go out and sit on the ground. I just hear buzzing all around me. Bumblebees flock to this one, I think, more than any other plant that I know. Honestly, you can take if you want to take a photo of a bumblebee, you can almost pet the bumblebees. They're so fascinated by the Nashville breadroot and so distracted they won't even know you're around when they're on that. So they also have the one thing about it, they have a very short blooming season. So when they're blooming, you better go see them because they don't stay around long. I mean, like Tennessee coneflower and limestone faneflower, they stay around several months, some of those. This one, in a couple of weeks, it's gone. So if you like this one, you better get out when it's blooming because it just doesn't bloom for long.
And that's kind of typical for April. April, it's just like, gosh, if you miss a week in April in the Cedar Glades, you're going to miss a lot. It's changing almost daily as far as plants that are out there.
There's another look at some Nashville breadroot, a little bit more flowering there in the glades. Again, you can see is where it's growing there, the rock. Okay, there we got some evening primrose. This is actually three-lobed evening primrose, also known as stemless evening primrose because it lacks an upright stem. Um, this one's somewhat rare. I think it's found in a few glades and barrens in Middle Tennessee, maybe a couple of East Tennessee counties. But where you do find it, sometimes you'll find a lot of it. They usually don't open until around late afternoon or near dusk, and they open at a time when their pollinators, the sphinx moths, become active. I see this one a lot. We have some in our ditch. We have like a rocky ditch. See them in the rocky ditches around the glades, and we have some people, even their lawns. We drive by our roads where we live, and you'll find a lot of them blooming at the same time. They can be spectacular late in the evening when the sun goes down, seeing all that yellow everywhere. Um, that is false garlic. I like one of those nicknames, also known as crow poison. You'll see this one a lot in March and April. I saw my first one of these the other day. This is not a glade endemic. They're frequent around Middle Tennessee. They kind of like the grassy barrens. And the name comes from the fact that even though it's a relative of the garlic and onion, it doesn't really have its bulbs and leaves doesn't really have that odor. But this is one kind of underrated. When they're blooming a lot, they look really nice when you see a lot of them together. This is one that surprises people, I think, around here that it grows here. This is Western wallflower. Um, as its name implies, this is mostly a Western species, and it's only found in just a handful of Tennessee counties. Uh, and they actually have it here in Davidson, where we are, have some in the glades near us, which I know I remember I had to tell some people in Division of Natural Areas about a few years ago because there were some spots they didn't even know where it occurred. And it does, surprisingly, it likes the limestone glades and the bluffs. It likes kind of the rocky open ground. So you can see in this photo, this one's growing kind of right under a cedar tree. I see some glade phlox and some moss. You can kind of gives you a hint about its habitat. Um, I think the name comes from the fact that it has that habit of like pushing its way through the cracks of like old rock walls, where it gets its name Wallflower. And I know Edgar Evans, they have like a big tour every spring. This is such a unique and showy wildflower. They have like boat rides, and they'll take people and look up on the bluffs, the rocky bluffs, and see Western wallflower blooming. See the wallflower tours. But yeah, it's only in a few counties, and we're fortunate to have it here in the Glades as well.
Oh, this is Rose Verbena. It is one of the showiest. Here in a couple more weeks, it's going to be one of the showiest flowers out there in the glade. It's kind of a relative of lantana. So if you have lantanas and verbenas, you know that they kind of go through a resurgence. And so they bloom like crazy here in the springtime, and then they'll die off a little, they'll die back a little bit, but then there's a little resurgence that happens again in the fall. They're sometimes even in October you can find them blooming. But swallowtail butterflies for sure just they are just all kinds of butterflies are over, but swallowtails for sure are just really all over these guys. But usually, yeah, like I said, between March and October is when they're blooming. They kind of fade out just a little bit there in the summer. Here's a nice patch of them here. Really nice. This is a glade penstemon. What's the real name of it? Like slender flower beard tongue or slender flower penstemon. So it's the only one that again that grows in the glade. So we tend to, if it's the only species grown in the glade, we tend to just nickname it glade penstemon. The penstemons, our beard tongues, have one sterile uh, um, male portion of the flower that looks like it's hairy on the end. So that's where it gets its name beard tongue from. And this is just a sweet little flower. It's not very tall. Maybe it's pushing to say it gets 6 inches tall. Typically maybe around 4 or so. But that flower is smaller than a pencil eraser. That is small flowered skull cap. All the skull caps kind of have a two-lipped flower to them, and the top lip is rounded like a skull cap, and then the bottom part kind of sticks out and whatnot. But that's a cute little skull cap. And let's see, that is the Gladestone crop, or also called Widow's Cross. That's one of those ones that grows right in that as the rocks are breaking up, you can see the pavement behind it. And then this one's just found a little mound. Is there another
Yeah, I
picture
think
of
there's
everything? Yeah, it likes to, as that pavement or that ground ground rock is breaking up there from a solid piece, that's where you get that sedum. All they need is just a teeny tiny bit of soil. And so areas like this will get the sedum on it. And once that sedum kind of dies back, then you get the fame flowers in that kind of area.
They have a really nice aroma too. A lot of people don't know
Yeah.
if you want to brave enough to get down on your knees and try to if you can smell them. They're really nice.
And he showed this picture before here earlier in the slide program. He showed you all that Leavenworthia that was in that spot, but now look what's happened. Here's the sedum and the sand gladewort behind it. So on here's one that's in the middle of it kind of starts getting going there after the mustards, after the Leavenworthia. So that red in the picture is the seed pods from the Leavenworthia, and then the sedum grown up right behind it. You want to talk about?
Yeah, just up in the grassy areas. Well, even some of the, I guess, the gravelly areas too. But we have several sumacs you'll find in and around the Cedar Glades. This is fragrant sumac. I know leading hikes, people always look at that and think it's poison ivy, which it does have the leaves of three, and it does, favor the poison ivy a little bit of leaves. But this is more of a woody shrub rather than a hairy climbing vine like poison ivy. The leaves and the stems, as the name implies, are aromatic, have a nice smell. They have tiny yellow flowers. I saw one the other day just getting ready to bloom. The insects love these when they start blooming. And you see the red fuzzy fruits on it. That's the one you often see along the edges of the trails around the glades. The edges, they can get maybe, I don't know, 4 to 6 feet tall is normal. This is a very common one, kind of in the barrens of the glades areas. This is winged sumac. If you notice the distinctive wings there along the leaf stems, that's where it gets its name, winged sumac. Also nicknamed smooth sumac and shining sumac. Oh no, I'm sorry, smooth sumac. It's a shining sumac because it has kind of those shiny leaves. Winged sumac. You see the kind of the glossiness of the leaves there. This is also in the fall. It's some brilliant fall foliage. One of the first colors we see in the glades, like starting maybe late July. These will be bright red. These winged sumac leaves. But then I have the smooth sumac. If you notice the leaves here, they're kind of the edges are kind of entire. This next one is smooth sumac, which is also in the glades. Their leaves, I don't know if you can see, they have kind of like teethy, kind of a little bit teethy on the leaves. They're kind of jagged as compared to the winged sumac. But other than that, and also, of course, they don't have the wings along the stem. So that's how you can tell those apart, the smooth sumac and the winged sumac. This is an interesting little plant. This is Western daisy. Also has a lot of weird, unusual common names. One entire leaf Western daisy, and somebody even told me, I think a botanist said it's also known as Eastern Western daisies, which is kind of confusing. Astrantium integrifolium is the species Western daisy, and it's I know Dwayne Estes, who's with the Southeast Grassland, said it should be called Mid-South daisy because it's mostly endemic to the interior plateau, the ecoregion here. But you'll see this one along the edges of the glades and the woods, sometimes on roadsides. Don't confuse this one with oxeye daisy. A lot of people, oxeye daisy is very common in our area. Oxeye daisy is much larger plant. Western daisy is a shorter plant, has smaller flowers, and generally this has like entire leaves. They're like they have unlobed leaves, where the oxeye daisy has leaves that are lobed and has teeth on them, real jagged.
Like, more like a chrysanthemum.
Very jagged. So.
Oh, this one is really cool. You can't misidentify this one because there's not too many plants and flowers that look like this one in the Cedar Glade. This is actually one of our milkweeds. I think there's about 7 or 8 species of milkweeds that grow in the glade. This one happens to be one of the woody vines, and it's called Maroon Carolina milk vine, because those flowers this is kind of the typical maroon flower. I've seen them almost black. I have seen a yellow variety of this one that grows over in the cedar forest. And but yeah, it's if you would pinch, it's got that kind of a main vein in the heart-shaped leaves. If you would pinch that, then it's going to bleed the milk to it. But its nickname is called a spiny pod because it's got the typical milkweed pod to it. And of course, here's a green one. Now, usually they're kind of done blooming by the time they're getting those seed pods. But this one, you can see the picture there, the flower's still blooming. But then that'll eventually turn brown and it'll break open just like the typical milkweed pods. This one has a couple of different names. When I was working at Radnor, I had ID'd it as large Houstonia. I got out here in the Glades and people were calling it Venus's Pride. So it is one of the Houstonias
Yeah.
that is kind of like these drier areas, dry and rocky areas. Oh, let's see. That is Gattinger's lobelia. It took me a minute. So I was telling you earlier, we saw a picture of Dr. Gattinger, and so this little tiny blue lobelia is called Gattinger's lobelia. Again, really common throughout the glades. It's really nice when you see it kind of intertwined in what I call those spring mixes because they really just stand apart. That flower is only about the size of your thumbnail, though, so it's a very tiny lobelia. Here's the downy wood mint. Those wood mints are they look like a Muppet or something. They're just so crazy. Now, mints tend to grow. Of course, they have square stems, and so they have opposite leaves that kind of go back and forth on the stem. But the flowers on a mint, a lot of times they will be coming out right at the base of those leaves where they're at. So they call it in botany terms, they call it a verticil. So you can see some of the verticils. Sometimes they're triple decker. This is a double decker. Sometimes there's triple deckers, but they tend to be right along the petioles of the leaves there, and then you get a terminal cluster too. But again, usually about May or June is when you start seeing these kind of in the dry woods near the glades. And then this fella is this is narrowleaf verbane. Simplex is its species name because it's only got the one simple main flowering stalk and kind of a lighter purple as far as the verbanes go. And this is called narrow-leafed verbane. So the leaves are very, very narrow. And if you've noticed in a lot of these pictures, a lot of these plants have like narrow leaves because these glades are kind of almost like we call them the Tennessee desert sometimes. And these microhabitats that a lot of them are in, they're in this direct sunlight for, and drying them out. So they've got to have these different tricks to kind of help them conserve some water. So this is one plant that has narrow leaves. Having narrow leaves and not having a big surface helps you conserve your water. Waxy leaves help. Being very, very hairy. Again, a lot of these plants have the species name means hairy, so a lot of hair will help you preserve water. Being rough or sandpapery also helps you hold water. But yeah, so it's kind of neat to take a look at the way they are growing and where they're growing and what they do to help them save what little bit of water that they do get. Here in the spring, it can be or late winter and spring, you get a lot of water, and then you're all of a sudden you're drying out. Oh, and here's another nice little flower. This one is Gattinger's prairie clover. To me, somebody's described it, and I can't unsee it. Once they told me, they said, that looks like a ballerina's tutu. And I said, oh my gosh. And so now I can't unsee that. But that's exactly what it is. Just a very unusual flower, these prairie clovers. So this another one named after Dr. Gattinger. There's a close-up of the flower. Again, just looks like a little tutu, really pretty. They tend to be kind of clumpy like that and kind of mat forming. Again, like the breadroot, they just don't last. You got to get out and see them really, really quickly.
Okay, this one's a glade larkspur or Carolina larkspur. This one, I guess the delphinium comes from the Greek delphis, which means dolphin. You can see the buds are kind of like dolphin-like, shaped like a dolphin. You see the flower there, and go on to see the full bloom here. These can get really tall. They look like sometimes in the glades, they're much taller compared to the other glade species. They look like little skyscrapers out there when they're in bloom. Really unique plant. The name larkspur refers to the single spur formed by one of the 5 sepals there. But that's kind of a later April bloom, the glade larkspur. Bird's foot violet. This is an April, May bloom. It likes the open sandy areas. The common name refers to the finely cut leaves. They have narrow segments. It kind of resembles a bird's foot. This is probably I think this is the largest violet in Tennessee. That's one way, other than the leaves. Very, very large flowers.
Big bloom, about more than an inch across.
Yeah, much larger than any other. Glade Savor. If you've ever walked in the glades and have a really nice aroma, a minty smell, it might be this one. If you brush up against it, you'll definitely smell it. This Glade Savor is, yeah. I've made a really good tea out of these. I've actually chewed on the leaves, almost like spearmint gum. This is a glade endemic species. This photo is kind of misleading. It looks like big flowers. It's only about 3 or 4 inches tall, and the flowers are tiny, but very nice mint. Usually bloom in May. This is a very rare species, only found, I think, in a couple of Tennessee counties, including Rutherford County. You can find this one at Flat Rock. This is Missouri evening primrose, much bigger than the three-lobed primrose I showed earlier, probably twice as big, maybe 3 times larger. They can get 5 or 6 inches across in width. They are huge, very impressive when they're in their full bloom. You see them in the evening blooming. But if you're ever at Flat Rock Cedar Glade around, I don't know, May, it's probably when they bloom in the evening. These are fascinating and much larger than any of the other primrose species. And again, they open at dusk. They wilt, in the morning when the sun comes out.
And here's some sunny bells like the or evening primrose. They are pretty rare in the glades. They're just endemic to the Middle Tennessee glades too. And they like their feet wet. They are going to be where it's wet or seepy around these limestone outcroppings. So an interstate construction was actually rerouted because of a population of these sunny bells around Cedars of Lebanon. Wish we had them over here in Couchville, but so far no luck. Been looking hard for them. Shooting star. This is just like a neat little unusual flower. Again, not typically a cedar glade flower, but just one that is around the woods and kind of the drier areas around the glade. So they have the kind of smooth basil leaves that they pop out from, and just those beautiful little flowers that kind of look to me like some of the things from the nightshade family. Indian pink, also more popular in the woods. Long Hunter Volunteer Trail has a big population of these, but there's this one, I'm believing he took right out in the middle of Couchville Glade. There was a little dollop of woods out there.
Yeah,
And
like one chinkapin oak. There's one chinkapin oak tree out in the middle of the glade. And it's right under there, the chinkapin oak tree in the glade.
yeah. Oh, and I love this. I love this genus. I love Selene. There are so many neat things in that genus, but this is the fire pink, same thing, kind of in the woods, on the outskirts of the glades. So those will be coming along in mid-April. Another one that's hummingbird pollinated, the columbines, again, not a glade endemic or anything, but just in the woods around the glades. You talk about that one. You say it's an ugly flower.
Well, yeah, I know it's like the Milo pine. I was hiking with Milo pine in the glades. We both agreed it's maybe the ugliest plant in the Cedar Glades. Is kind of we laughed about it. It's kind of an odd, kind of alien looking plant. This false Cromwell, very hairy, kind of the tubular shaped greenish white flowers. A lot of the species in this family is called marble seeds. Have really hard seeds. Yeah, that's one. It's hard. Sometimes you don't notice it because it's not very showy. I mean, that's his flowers. That's his full bloom right there. Believe it or not.
Yeah. And green drag. So the false cromwell is the only one in this kind of thing that we've had that are true cedar glades. Now here's the green dragon. Again, just some of the kind of the wet woods and stuff around the glades. You'll happen to see some of these green dragons related to the jack in the pulpits and the heirloom family.
Okay.
And here's
I'm trying to go through these quickly because I know we still have several to go. I'm going to go kind of a little bit quicker on here. This is named after Elsie Quarterman. Quarterman's hedge hyssop. This is a little tiny kind of funnel shaped flower. They can get kind of creamy yellow. They have little purple veins. I don't know if you can see they have little purple veins in the flowers. They love water. If you can see, these are growing right in the water in a limestone glade. It's a rare plant. I love the timing of this one because this one blooms every year about the same time the Elsie Quarterman Cedar Glade Wildflower Festival starts every year. So I have a special place for that one. This is Small's ragwort, kind of one you see in the grassy areas. When I say Small's ragwort, not the size, it's named after a botanist, John K. Small. This one loves moist meadows. You can see how it can get really nice looking when it's in its
really
peak bloom.
Pretty when you get a lot of them together.
Around the barrens. American Columbo, that's one sometimes in the glades, kind of the woods of the glades nearby. One of the tallest Tennessee wildflowers. They get up to like 10 feet or so. You'll often see these large rosettes in the woods, and people wonder what they are. And that's usually American Columbo because most of the time they don't bloom. But every year they'll add leaves until finally they will bloom. bloom one year and then they'll die off. So I think I got a photo of the flowers. They're kind of unusual flowers, kind of like whitish, greenish, little purple spots on them. This is Gattinger's Blue Star. There's the Eastern Blue Star is more common. The Gattinger's Blue Star, it kind of likes the glades and also kind of these gravel banks, kind of the wet areas. The best way to tell this one from the Eastern Blue Star, number one is the habitat. Of course, this one gets likes glades and gravel bars, but the leaves are much more narrow on the Gattinger's Blue Star as compared with the Eastern Blue Star.
This is one of the Gerardia species, slender Gerardia. Again, it's pretty easy to tell. It's a low-growing plant, kind of very branchy, very panicled, but not more than about 6 to 8 inches tall. But they've got that kind of red stem and that light lilac flower, so that's the easiest way to kind of identify them. They start coming along about June or so. This is one of the mountain mints, narrow leaf. Again, narrow leaf in the name, telling you that it grows kind of in the barren or the prairie parts of the glade, the grassy glades. This is one of the indigo plants. That one's, I think, actually down in Flat Rock where you find that
false
one.
blue indigo.
Yeah, false blue indigo. Here's one of
the good old prickly pear.
Prickly pear.
Eastern prickly pear.
About that one.
Oh yeah, it's hard. I mean, I know a lot of people are still amazed. I leave the high say, well, you have a native prickly pear? You have a native cactus? In Tennessee, yeah, that's Eastern prickly pear. Even though, it's kind of common in the glades, and I still think it's one of the most beautiful flowers. I got lucky that year; just it all bloomed at one time, and I just got the perfect storm. Usually, they're kind of more sporadic, the flowers on it, but it's a fantastic bloom. We'll get on right here before we lose out of time. There's two of our favorites: the limestone fame flower. There it is. You can see the limestone rock, prickly pear cactus near it. There it is, the limestone. You see those succulent leaves. This is the flower to me that defies all the odds. It blooms in the hottest part of the year, the hottest time of the day in the afternoon, the most inhospitable of habitats, the hot cedar glades, no cover, out in the rock. I mean, it amazes me.
Don't look for it in the morning.
The color, don't look for it in the morning. It won't be flowering in the morning. People ask me what time it blooms. I say it blooms from 2:27 p.m. to 4:19 p.m. And people laugh, and I say technically that's about correct. 2.5, 3 hours sometimes is all it'll flower. So I mean, that's the only time you'll see it. You have to be out in the hot glades. I love the color, such a unique color, the succulent leaves, just a fascinating plant. And there's one more. I mean, just look where it's flowering. I mean, it's just everything. It's just gravelly, rocky, barren, and there's that fantastic wildflower. So I really.
He likes to say the little flower that could.
Yeah.
The little flower that could. All right, here's our Tennessee coneflower, Echinacea tennesseeensis. And so this was rediscovered by Dr. Quarterman. There were 5 populations when it was rediscovered. And so it became one of the first plants to be put on the endangered species list in 1979. It's now delisted to threatened. I think that was 2011 that they delisted it. But it starts blooming around my birthday in mid-May. And kind of keeps going on through October. I would say the peak is probably June.
Yeah, mid-June.
Mid-June, yeah.
I've actually found these blooming, believe it or not, on Thanksgiving Day. They have a long blooming season.
They have that 90-degree crook in their neck that makes them, and they kind of face eastward. So all the heads are facing towards the east and facing towards the sun. So it's really something to be out there in the middle of all of them. They're only about 15 inches tall at the most. Just a lovely color. There's one kind of a typical scene that you see out with the cactus blooming at the same time. Again, cactuses start blooming about Memorial Day. These guys can sometimes be just starting about Memorial Day themselves. Here's a petunia that grows in the glade petunia, one of the ruellas. That looks like a Muppet too. That's a wild bergamot. That's a mint.
That's the flower having a bad hair day.
Bad hair. Yeah, he says it has a bad hair day. So
wild bergamot.
Wild bergamot.
Just go through these last few
sure.
really quickly. Shrubby St. John's wort. It's a shrub you'll find a lot of times in the woods or along the glades. Beautiful flower. prairie mimosa,
mimosas.
also known as Illinois bundle flower. You see that kind of in the grassy glades. It looks like somebody stuck their finger like in an electric socket. I think the flower. That's where I see that flower.
And those are
Uh,
actually not petals; those are the stamens. That's the
yeah,
male portion of the
yeah.
flower.
And then that's what the seed pod. It goes to seed. Those will turn brown later. Very, very fascinating plant. Just the flower and the seed pods. False aloe, kind of unusual plant. You'll see sometimes in the glades. I'll let you mention that one.
Oh, give me this one because it's my favorite. Back home in the Ohio tallgrass prairies, this was kind of overlooked, but I get down here in the glades and it kind of becomes the queen of the prairie down here about June. But Retibia, I think it's just a beautiful flower. Gets confused with black-eyed Susans, but it's taller, much taller and lankier than black-eyed Susans. And the petals are kind of whimsical. They kind of have their own little twist and turn, and it gives the flower its own personality. Whereas the Susans kind of have stiffer petals, so they don't have as much. There's another little tiny kind of one that's almost like baby's breath. This is called slender heliotrope. So it does the same thing. It's just one of those nice little accent flowers that are out there in the glades, around the cone flowers, around the prairie cone flowers, around the gerardia. It just does exactly what kind of baby's breath does, that slender heliotrope. Another one, the milkweed. This is the antelope horn milkweed. So again, you can see that typical milkweed flower, the column there in the center, and all the stamens united, and the hoods and the horns of the flower. Nice central main vein on the leaf. It's nice simple leaf, extraordinary sticking out main vein. If you pop it, it's going to bleed that latex. Here's another
Yeah,
one. He likes this one.
yeah, that's
That
the
one.
green comet
That's green
milkweed.
comet.
That's one unusual milkweed. Most of them are in the grassy areas. You find this one out in the glades and the gravelly areas, right beside. You can see the Tennessee coneflowers right behind it. The greenish color of the flowers is unusual, and also the lack of the horns on the flowers, kind of otherworldly looking. And sometimes it's so heavy with that stem, that flower, it kind of like sprawl, it'll kind of lay on the ground. But green comet milkweed. Then, of course, butterfly milkweed. I won't say a whole lot about that one other than, the butterflies love that one. That's kind of out in the grassy glades. This is another climbing milk vine. We saw the maroon Carolina milk vine earlier. This is the angle pod climbing milk vine. The flower of this one is kind of a green, fleshy looking, like kind of star-like, most unusual flower. Big heart-shaped leaves. The reason it's called angle pod, I'll show you the pod. There's the seed pod. You saw the spiny pod earlier had that kind of spiky look that was maroon Carolina milk vines, and this one's a little bit more smooth and has kind of that unusual angle to it.
Going on with the milkweeds again, this one is whorled milkweed. So WHORLED has the little skinny tiny whorl of leaves around it. So it's kind of a tall and lanky plant also, but each one of those heads is maybe about the size of a silver dollar or so. And this is one of the St. John worts. It's called round fruited St. John wort. You can see a capsule there. The seed pods or the capsules are rounded instead of elongated like most of the St. John worts. We've got gumweed. This one starts coming along. It's really prevalent more in the fall, but every once in a while you get one that wants an early start there, kind of in late June. The sepals and the filaries in this plant are kind of stickery. It's got a lot of resins in the plant, so it's very, very tacky and sticky plant. So they use that resin or that gum for several different things and medical purposes. That's the leafy prairie clover. Now, this is a federally endangered one. Just a few spots around in the glade. We kind of keep those locations a little bit secret because they're hard to find and very, very rare. But they kind of like some of the wetter areas and seepy areas. You want to talk about
Well,
any of the
Tim, I
trees
think
real quick?
yeah, it's 7:30. I think that's the end of our actually wildflowers. We had a few more things, but I think that's we got in. I think we got in all of our wildflowers, Tim.
Yes, I want to say I think we started about 3 minutes late, so I'm encouraging you to keep going for at least 3 minutes,
Okay,
and
let me.
then see if we have any questions too.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I would like to mention a few trees you'd find in Cedar Glades because trees are also native plants. Blue ash is one you see in the Cedar Glades a lot. It can handle that thin rocky soil. There's some blue ash, typical kind of the white scaly bark. Kind of there's the blue ash, the leaves. That is, if you look at the stem there, it has a square. Blue ash has square stem. It's Fraxinus quadrangulata, which means four-sided. If you ever see a tree with square stems in the glades, probably blue ash. And there's where you might find a blue ash, kind of in the rocky. It loves limestone. You see that rose verbena blooming behind it. So blue ash is one of the trees you'll find in the Cedar Glades. Another one is, I won't say much about eastern red cedar because you're probably familiar with that one. There's the bark and the leaves of eastern red cedar. The trees in the glade are kind of usually scraggly looking because of that thin rocky soil. There you can see eastern red cedar here, eastern red cedar. There's a blue ash. Sometimes that's as good as they can do in the glades, that thin rocky soil. The third tree I find in the Cedar Glades a lot is winged elm. You got your winged elm bark, your winged elm leaf. There's the stem. You see that corky look along their branchlets. That's where the winged elm gets its name. The little corky wings along their branches. And there's a winged elm where you might find a winged elm. It loves like the prairie, the grasses, the barrens. It's a pioneer tree. It's one of the first trees that'll take over an open field. I love this scene right here. There's the three Cedar Glade trees right together. You usually don't see them get that big and right together too. On the left, there's a blue ash. There's eastern red cedar, and that's a winged elm. That's an unusual scene I found in a glade. Post oak, you see that in the grassy barrens a lot. There's the bark and the kind of the cross shape, kind of thick leathery leaf. There's where you might find a post oak out in the open fields. They used to make fence posts from those. They find them out in the farms a lot because you see them out in the barrens like that. And the other one I'll say is a chinkapin oak. Chinkapin oak is in the white oak family, has that light gray scaly bark, those narrow coarsely toothed leaves. You'll see those on the edges of the Cedar Glades a lot, sometimes even out in the glades. There's a scene here. This is Castle Cedar Glade. Those along the trail, all these trees on the left side, those are all chinkapin oaks. It's kind of where the grassy glades meets the gravelly glades is where you'll find the chicken oak. And there's just some spring mixes I just photographed. It has a variety. This one has a Gattinger lobelia, narrowleaf vervain.
This is a pop quiz for everyone.
Yeah, glade savory, Venus's pride. I love the mixes. There's one that has evening primrose with the glade sandwort, small skullcap in it. There's a mix of Nashville breadroot, hoary pecoon, I think rose verbena back in there, white blue-eyed grass. There's some Gattinger lobelia, glade savory in there. Just small as ragwort there in the back. Right. I'm just showing some of the flowers you've seen earlier kind of together. That's an interesting mix. There's glade phlox and there's rue anemone, which we've not mentioned. Not really a glade species, but you see it in the mossy glades sometimes. There's glade cress with the glade phacelia. You usually don't see those two together very often. And there's rose verbena with white blue-eyed grass. I love these combinations where you see some of these kind of overlapping together. That's one of my favorite things. And we'll do this really quickly. We did our top 10 list, our 5 favorite flowers, each one of us. We didn't know what the other was going to say. She chose number 5 is glade savory. And actually, was weird. My number 5 was also glade savory. We had no idea. Her 4th favorite there was the antelope horn milkweed.
I just love that.
And mine was the maroon Carolina milk vine. Was my number 4. Her number 3 was limestone fameflower. My number 3 was glade cress. There you can see sort of the violet color. Her number 2 was Gattinger's prairie clover.
The tutu flower.
Yeah, my number 2 was Nashville breadroot. And her number 1 was prairie coneflower. And my number 1 was limestone fameflower. And there we go.
Well, thank you so much. This was like going on a hike through the glades. Really.
Sorry, we got kind of fast there. I wanted to see how much we could cram in there. We elaborate so much. Sometimes we go overboard, but I'm glad we got them in somehow.
Get our camera back on here.
In this case, more is better. So, I mean, that's an exceptional list of flowers and trees. I mean, we saw everything, and I have a better understanding of what the glades are and why they do what they do. So this was hugely valuable to our group. I don't know if we have any questions tonight. We'll give it another couple of minutes if somebody wants to raise their hand for a question.
Oops, I'm trying to get back in here.
You disappeared.
Yeah, there I am.
Yeah, that's not all the spring flowers you'll find in the glades. We just kind of hit some of the highlights, some of the more unusual ones. But yeah, it seems like it's never ending as far as the number of different species you can find out there in the spring.
Right.
That was very awesome. So thank you so much. And tell us a little bit about Nest.
Well, I retired from, I worked for over 20 years, 20 plus years at Tennessee State Parks. Started out at Radnor for about 10, Long Hunter about 11-ish or so, and then there's seasonal stuff in between. But I retired in February. And I thought, well, why am I quitting? You know, no. So I love teaching people. I've always loved teaching people about flowers, and so this was just a way to kind of keep going on with the flower classes that have been really popular, and just getting out and still doing the things I love.
Yeah, we try to do presentations for environmental organizations, for schools, for libraries. We're going to be leading more hikes in the future as we get kind of our feet under us. We even will go to people's properties and help them ID their plants and their trees and their flora and fauna on their properties. We're going to be at several events upcoming. I know we're going to be at the MTSU Earth Day event, have a table there. We're doing I think Murfreesboro Outdoors. We're doing a night hike. We're going to do moths, white bats, and frogs. A night hike at Murphy Springs and Murfreesboro. So we're trying to do a little bit of everything. We're both just we're open for anything. We're both passionate about this, and we love being able to do what we want to do on a daily basis. So we're excited about it.
I wanted to put a plug in for, oops, I don't know where I went. Oh, here we
There
go.
you
There
go.
you are. I can.
Yeah, so Jason and Leslie Ann were partners in the putting this booklet together, the limestone cedar glades, some of the rare and common species. A lot of the plants that they talked about tonight are in this booklet. The only way that you can get this booklet is if you're attending an event that the Tennessee Native Plant Society is tabling at. And we don't sell them through our website or anything like that. It's not possible. But try and attend an event. And I know Jason does a great job advertising events that they'll be at. I know that they'll be carrying the booklet and other places as well. I loved all the photos tonight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Kim. Yeah, that's a fantastic booklet. I mean, we did a little bit on it, but Kim, she was the one that spearheaded it. And there's not too many guys just on the Cedar Glades, and that's as good as I've seen. If you're interested in all, I would highly recommend tracking that down.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm going to turn off the record button now, but
Okay.
that doesn't mean everybody has to leave. We can stick around for a minute here.
I will say that we have an event in Chattanooga, our plant sale on March 28th, and we will have plenty of the Cedar Glades booklets. So come on by and get one.